My name is Annika Wilmers. I work at the Office for International Cooperation Education at the DIPF, which is the Leibniz Institute for Educational Research and Educational Information in Frankfurt. For this purpose, we offer advice to educational researchers in Germany and abroad for their research projects. This could be support to find international partners. This could be support for research funding for international projects, or this could be support to connect a research project to the international research community, for example, by organizing conferences or talks or similar networking activities, or what we do once a year at the annual meeting of the American Educational Research Association is to organize international sessions there with different international partners.
I'm Rose Yelamaki. I'm professor and department chair of education, leadership, and policies at the University of South Carolina. Tonight, I'm going to talk about what is important to me in terms of my research and to me as an educator in the world and in the United States. In that I'm interested in public education as a human right, for the right of children around the world and within nation states. And I'm interested in democracy and how education can play a role now, given the changing conditions in Western democracies, as we have increasing diversity, increasing plurality, and yet nation states, democratic and otherwise, really need to think about how we build a culture in new ways. It's very fortunate that we are here in German House because Germany has given us a lot of advice in the past. In fact, advice the U.S. has taken and have provided elsewhere. So I'm very interested to hear what the panelists have to say tonight.
Hi, my name is Joel Westheimer. I'm a professor and university research chair of democracy and education at the University of Ottawa in Canada, Ontario. And my research goes along three kind of lines of investigation. The first is what public education policy, what impact it has on school classrooms and on student learning and teacher workplace conditions. And that considers the underlying ideology and values and politics that are at play in school reform. The second is what schools' role in democratic societies in particular are, and that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. And the third, related to the second, is how schools talk about issues like economic inequality or other controversial issues and how that plays out in the classroom, the kinds of opposition to those issues there are, and what teachers' practices are related to those values. So what I'm going to be talking about tonight is the second pillar, what the role of schools in democratic societies are. And we are at a time that seems to raise this question to a high level of importance, given that there are populist and nationalist governments being favored now across parts of Europe and here in North America as well. And I'm particularly interested in what can schools do in the classrooms, the schools as a whole, and even in outside of school activities to further the idea of educating for democracy. And by that I mean educating for a kind of civic participation and political participation that takes seriously the ideas that we live in a multicultural and multi-idea society that requires people to be able to traffic in multiple perspectives, to understand that people with differing views might still have goals in mind that have something in common with themselves, and that they have a role to play in advancing democracy and in improving society.
My name is Hermann Abs. I'm working at the University of Duisburg-Essen. This university is located quite in the middle of Germany, in the Ruhr area, and I'm interested in international civic and citizenship education. I had the honor to lead a study in that area which was accomplished last year, and we did the German report on this study. The study results give me reason to think about public education and what are challenges for public education today. I think the situation for public education has changed a lot during the last decades. While in former times we could work with teachers and students that shared a common history and common identification and common narratives, we now have a studentship and teachers that have not anymore common identifications and common narratives. They bring together in schools quite different affiliations and quite different pictures of the past and what the present should be. Our students now think whether they can trust their teachers anymore with their histories and narratives. And they also wonder whether they can trust their fellow students. There are students, for example, from Serbia and Kosovo, where they're in their homelands, their uncles and sometimes also their fathers are still fighting or have fights against each other. There are students from Turkey and Kurdistan or Kurdish regions of Syria, and although their uncles and maybe fathers are still fighting against each other, and now they should come together in a public school system and be educated to common goals. This is a huge challenge, and we have to think about how to accomplish this.
I'm Ingrid Gogolin, University of Hamburg, Universität Hamburg in Germany. I'm doing research in the area of education in multilingual and multicultural societies. So one topic of my research is the consequences of migration for education and formation. The consequences of linguistic and cultural diversity for the individual on the one hand and for the societies, for the development of the societies on the other hand. Well, a point I would like to make tonight is that according to our really deeply seated traditions from the 19th century, a lot of our beliefs and regulations that rule education still today, at least in the country Germany where I come from, are deeply seated in the 19th century, where the belief that people usually are monolingual and that a society is usually monocultural came about. These beliefs are still ruling a lot of our education systems, and this leads to the consequence that neither linguistic or cultural diversity for the individual is taken into account in a proper way, nor the question comes to the education system if diversity can be an asset or can be a chance for a society in the 21st century.
I'm Gustavo Fishman from Arizona State University, and I'm going to talk today about the false dichotomy between citizens and consumers. The notions that we have two separate subjects is creating lots of problems, particularly when we talk about citizenship education. The main thesis is that we are one, that is citizen and consumer at the same time, and what we need to do is to exercise more our citizenship muscles. That's something that American schools and many schools throughout the world are losing sight, and they are reducing citizenship to very patriotic rituals, but not participation, talking about democracy and engaging in real change.